which to this day I really feel guilty about.
That was because the interview with Martin Bashir was the one where he was asked questions about young boys,
Yeah.
and he said something which proved to be compromising?
Michael did some, again, awesomely devastating mistakes in that interview. Otherwise, if he didn't do those things he did, this is my opinion now, it would have been a fantastic interview for him. But he sat there with a 13-year-old boy holding his hand, telling the camera that it's okay to invite kids to his bed and put them to sleep with warm milk. Michael never understood that first of all, I want to make this clear that Michael was totally innocent. And as we all know, he was found to be totally innocent in a court of law.
You hypnotized him and he said under your hypnosis...
That was another case that to me proved that Michael was innocent. I hypnotized him. It was in a studio in New York, a music studio. It was called a Hit Factory. He asked me about some junk food he was eating, how he could stop eating that. And I said to Michael, in Israel I started with hypnotism. Do you want me to hypnotize you? And he said, oh, really, can you do that? And I hypnotized Michael, and I did something, and I admit I did something highly unethical. I asked him, while he was in deep trance, in deep hypnosis, I asked him, Michael, did you ever touch a child in an inappropriate manner? And he immediately said, no, I would never do that. And then I asked him, why did you pay Jody Chandler off so many millions of dollars? And his answer was, I couldn't take it anymore. I had enough. To me, that was a private validation that this poor man was totally and utterly innocent.
And reading the story of the trial, the doctor's trial, that must have been devastating for you, realizing that he could still be alive.
Laurie, I really don't want to talk about the trial. You can imagine how many phone calls I got from worldwide to talk about the trial and Dr. Murray. I don't want to go there, but definitely, the day Michael died, it was utterly devastating, like to the whole world. I could not believe the first call that came through was from CNN, and they asked me if it's true, if he's in a coma, and I thought it was a hoax. It's just my mind could not accept that sentence that he might not be alive. So I shut the phone down. But I had a bad feeling, and I told Hannah, my wife, to turn back. We were driving from my home into Reading. We turned back, and as I was driving down our driveway, I heard the phones ringing all over the house. I knew that something, some tragedy occurred.
Is your life a bit now? You did refer to those moments in the sort of 70s when your huge desire to be almost a rock star and to have money and it all mattered and you were wrapped up in all that celebrity culture. You're now away from the controversies and the, if you like, all the mad excitement and anxieties and concerns of those days. You've quietened down, have you? Can we say that you don't want controversy so much?
Oh, no, on the contrary. Laurie, I would not be sitting here if I was not controversial. You see, when the first negative article appeared in Israel, I think it was in 1969. It was a magazine called Ha'olam Hazeh, which doesn't exist anymore. And the headline screamed that I use trickery to achieve what I do, and so on. I thought that I was finished then. But more people came to see me that evening in one of my big shows on the stages of Israel. But the biggest lesson was actually in America when I was invited to do Johnny Carson. Now, Johnny Carson was obviously a legend. Anyone who did Johnny Carson made it in the USA. And there I was, sitting in front of Johnny Carson. I didn't know that Johnny Carson was an amateur magician and he was a skeptic and he didn't believe in anything psychic. And nothing happened. And the only thought that kind of turned in my head, Uri Geller, you're finished. You might as well go back to the hotel, pack up, and go back to Israel. I was humiliated for 22 minutes. I was sitting there sweating. And
you were trying to make something happen, though, were
well,
you?
by the way, spoon did bend in Ricardo Montalban's hand, but that was wasn't enough for Johnny Carson. He wanted it to twist. But anyhow, I went back to the hotel after that night, devastated, fell on the bed. And I was actually about to pack the next morning to go back, because I thought this ended Uri Geller's short career. And the next morning, the receptionist wakes me up. She says, "Mr. Geller, you have a Merv Griffin on the line." And I said, "Merv Griffin?" Merv Griffin was as big as Johnny Carson in the United States in the 70s. And I pick up the phone, and Merv says to me, "Uri Geller, I saw you on Johnny Carson. I want you on my show tomorrow night."
So failure didn't make any difference at all?
There's no such thing as bad publicity.
But only so much bad publicity. I mean, OK, you failed on the Johnny Carson show, but supposing you'd failed on the Merv Griffin show, suppose you fail 4 or 5 times, that becomes different. And this is what I wanted to ask you about, because it's peculiar, this, and you can help me with this. See, one of the reasons why people were able to say that your failure didn't matter was because for some people it meant you weren't a magician. If you were just a magician, your tricks would work every time. But if in fact you had psychic powers, then one could expect that psychic powers would not operate on all occasions. So in a strange sort of way, that failure could be used to get you off the hook of being a mere magician, couldn't it?
Absolutely. You're right. You see, unlike a singer, suddenly if they lose the voice, they can't sing. But with me, if I fail in a demonstration, then I say, "I'm sorry, I didn't have the power, I didn't have the energy." Mind you, I'm not saying now here that the failure is because it was a trick. No, because maybe my energies didn't work that moment. Maybe I was exhausted, maybe I was jet lagged. But it is true, absolutely. I can say, "I'm sorry, it didn't work." And you're right, a lot of people will identify with that and say, "Wow, you know, he admits it. That just doesn't work all the time."
But
so they like you more.
But when I was saying before that you've in a way pulled back from controversy, it seemed, and you were saying, no, you love controversy, but isn't it true that you have made yourself rather less controversial by not talking, as you used to do so much, about psychic powers?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Oh, no, but I'm just leading to this.
Yeah.
So you perhaps don't use, as far as I know, the word sort of paranormal.
No, I'll explain myself.
You say you're a mystifier and an entertainer.
Yeah, let me explain myself, okay? The skeptics, who are so totally insignificant to me, actually, I have to send them hundreds of bouquets of flowers because they created the legend of Uri Geller.
Well, they keep you going, don't they?
You know, I mean, you can't buy controversy. It's like you can't buy charisma.
You know, where would Professor Randy be without you?
Absolutely. You know, and not only him, but in general, the skeptics are a tiny, tiny minority. They're insignificant. They achieve nothing. They you know, they try to shoot down the big, you know, the big players. But if you open any paper today, any magazine, you'll find 10,000 psychics advertising their tarot reading, this mind reading, and so forth. Every major newspaper has an astrology page. So what did they achieve? Zero. But to me, I use them as a tool for publicity. What they didn't understand, what the skeptics did not understand, is PR. I consider myself the king of PR. At least one of them. Why do I call myself a mystifier today?
Well, why did you stop calling yourself paranormal then? Why did you stop that? Really?
I'm explaining.
Yeah, sure.
First of all, it is not true because the internet is full today with I mean, I mentioned, I don't know how many tens of millions of times, but many of those stories are untrue. So, first of all, if you ask me today, Uri Geller, are you a paranormalist? My answer is yes. But why did I choose to call myself a mystifier? Because I created an amazing television show. It was an amazing format. It's called The Successor. In many countries, it's called The Next Uri Geller, The New Uri Geller phenomenon. I created it in Israel. Now, the performers in each country, I don't know how they do what they do. And I don't want to know. There is only one thing I want to know, and I want to see one thing. I want to see the most mind-blowing show in front of me. I want the people at home to go, wow. I want my hair to stand on end. It's entertainment. It's not scientific. So, in order to respect the performers, so they don't worry about their careers, the future, that they appeared with Uri Geller, who claims that he's a psychic, I decided to call myself a mystifier.
I understand.
Because a mystifier is not here, and it's not there.
So you, in a way, you get off, and so no one can say, listen, we can show how that trick was done on your programme. That doesn't mean anything to you, that's fine. You're a mystifier. You're not claiming there are psychic powers
Absolutely,
involved.
and if it was a trick, if they did it with a trick, or if they did it with real, it's up to the people at home to judge, or I don't even want them to judge it. Enjoy it.
But if I go back to the beginnings of your life, tell me about that period of your life, what it was like to be you, feeling that you could do things and affect inanimate objects around you. Go back to that moment.
You know, Laurie, I really did not feel special. I thought that it was a talent or a skill that, like other children, could play the piano or sing or play basketball better than me. I just thought it was another facet of a skill that I acquired. Now, the sphere of light did happen, and as a matter of fact, now, for the first time in, what, 40, 50 years, somebody actually validated it. A retired Israeli Air Force officer was crossing exactly at that moment in Rothschild Boulevard, and he saw this little boy with this huge sphere of light, and he actually came out and said it. I saw Uri. So I knew, and I know today that it happened. What it was, I don't know. But I was determined to be successful, Laurie, because we were poor. My mother was a seamstress. My mother was a waitress. I'll never forget the days when I had to go, when she went to play cards, I would kick her in the foot when I knew who had a joker. And then when we left the club...
When you knew psychically who had the joker.
Psychically, absolutely. And then she used to collect plastic spoons to wash them and sell them the next day. She was a waitress in a coffee shop, and I wanted all that stopped. I wanted her to stop working. I wanted to buy her a television set. So I had to do it. And that's how I felt. That's what was in my mind. Uri Geller, you have to be successful. You have to become rich and famous. And when this talent came to me, I knew how to use it.
Weren't you frightened? Weren't you frightened?
No.
I would be frightened.
No.
I'm a 5 or 6 year old boy, and I'm doing these strange things happening around me.
I was not frightened at all. No.